Well, I'd like to welcome all those people that watch my YouTube video channels. And this year, since the lockdown, I got tired of talking about myself. Now, Geoff, that's hard to believe. I know me being an Irish guy, but I really got tired of talking about me, and I said, I got some friends out there that they got a world message, and they got a different message, and they got a different energy, and I would like to share that with others. Now, we were talking just before we went onto this recording that introduction to you is not really possible. The only thing that I got some friends out there, I got a nephew and some other people that are into martial arts. So I will say this, because I'm online looking at all this stuff, and apparently Black Belt Magazine declared you the greatest influence on martial arts since Bruce Lee, which is huge. And I'm not a martial artist, but that impressed me because I know that's pretty big. And for those listening in here who don't know who you are in America, which I find impossible, but you've written at least 35, 40 books. I don't know, it's growing every time I talk to you.
Yeah, it's closer to 50 now, but
50? Yeah, but who's counting?
Who's counting?
and a bunch of movies. I mean, there's dozens of projects in the works or have been done. I was just watching those two that you gave me links to the other day. Powerful messages and stuff. And you've written books that are great. But you know what? The book that everybody overlooks, that even when I had a whole pile of books from you, and I went through, and this was the last book I read, The Caretaker.
Yeah.
I was thin. I'm going, yeah, okay, what is this? This is where you change.
Oh, thank you, Bill.
This is where I see a whole energy shift from the old martial arts, the bouncer, the braggart, the scared kid.
Yeah.
I saw a monk here. I saw the beginnings of going within. And
I wrote that book, Bill. I wrote that book and didn't know how to promote it because I just didn't know. I didn't really understand it. It came through me, and I just didn't know how to promote it. I did a load of promotion, but I just didn't know what to say because I couldn't articulate I knew what it was saying to me. I knew the wisdom of it. I understood it because it came through me, but I didn't recognize it as my own. I recognized it as a message that even I was saying at some points. Is that true? And then I thought, well, it feels absolutely congruent. But when people were asking me what it was about, I couldn't really explain. And I think that's a good sign. But there's a couple of very close friends of mine. I've got a friend called Mike Morris, who's a guy that I'm very close to. And he always says to me, that's the best book you've ever written. And I said, it hasn't sold very well. He goes, well, you know how it is, Geoff. It can take years for books to break through. But I always felt when I wrote it, must be a dozen people said to me, did you write that about me? And I said, well, actually, no, I wrote it about me because I was sick of listening to my own will. And I wrote a letter to God and said, please, when I ask for enlightenment now, pretend you didn't hear me because I'm not ready. The fact that I'm asking you to give me something I haven't earned yet means I'm not ready. So it was a letter to myself, and it unfolded beautifully. Those photographs were taken by Sean Disparango. He's one of the top 5 photographers in the world, and God brought him to me to do those photographs. He didn't charge me anything because he would have been too embarrassed to charge me because the project was congruent, it was right. And I loved what he did. I loved everything about the book. But when it landed, it was, I think it was one of those things where, people were looking at it, but just couldn't see it. It was so close. It was what in Islam they would call yaqeen, certainty, truth. It was right in front of people, but they couldn't see it. So I really appreciate you saying that. I didn't expect you to say that, but I do love it myself.
Yeah, because I'm reading your new stuff. I read your manuscript you sent me and everything, and the new stuff is elevated. I mean, it's really going. To say you're evolving would be an understatement. To say you're even the same guy that I met and knew and walked with around the Abbey back in, what was it, 2016?
2016, yeah.
You're not that guy.
You caught me at the beginning of a new transition, and you actually announced it to me. I don't forget that you announced it to me, and you told me I would be attacked, and I knew I would be because, of course, when you approach the truth, you know, when you approach the fire and thorns of the kingdom, you are attacked. But the attack didn't come from people. The attack came from hidden forces, came from internal forces, and the attack was severe. And it was ordained. It was, you know, I've got no complaints, but the attack was severe. It brought me to my knees. But I always remember you saying to me, you will be attacked. And I remember thinking, well, I've been attacked a lot over the last so many years because I speak an uncommon truth to the common man, because I tell the truth about my own story, about my insecurities and about my weaknesses and my frailties and the amount of times I have sinned and made mistakes. So I do that as a part of my own cleansing. But I remember you saying it to me, and I remember you saying it to me, and at the same time, and you did a prayer for me as well, and you did a blessing for me, which I've never forgotten. But I remember knowing at the same time that the attack this time would not be exoteric; it would be esoteric. It would come from the hidden realms, and it did. And it was, but even the elements that were attacking me were just preparing me. They were dragging me away from the corporeal earth. They were asking me to elevate, and to do that, of course, you said something in your email to me yesterday. You're lighter, and of course I am, because all of these old elements or elementals were taken out of me, and I reclaimed those parts of me and made room for God. You know, the ultimate kenosis.
It's hard for people when it's like you grow up, your parents never see you as the adult, right?
Yeah.
And you grew up in this martial arts community where you were the guy, and then everybody was emulating to be like you were at that moment, but you were
Yeah.
always evolving. So when you reach the point where you're beyond their grasp and understanding, and they're trying to follow you and they can't, then they get angry.
Yeah.
When I met you, I was sensing these angry martial artist type community guys and that whole earlier group in your life as angry at you because you've changed. You're not the same.
Yeah.
Like you're leaving them
Yeah.
behind,
Yeah.
even though you were kind of going, come with me.
Come with me. I don't want to go on my own. I want you to come with me. I want to, but of course we both know that you have to go alone. You have to make the entry alone. And you know, you leave your bread in the marketplace so that people can follow, if they want to follow. Some people will follow. Some people I read online saying to think, when I was talking about the metaphysical power of forgiveness, to think that I used to respect this man. And they don't realize the esoteric is a whole new level of power. It's a whole new level of influence. And it's something Muhammad said when the soldiers were coming back from war, and there were some of them were dying, some of them were dead, some of them were dismembered, some of them were mortally injured. And he was like this: well done, congratulations. And they said, what do you mean? You know, he was kind of saying, you know, oh, well done, you know. And he said, what do you mean? He said, well, that's the lesser jihad. The greater jihad is when you go inside and you go to war with the source of the Sita Akra, with the source of the adverse forces. That's when you're really going to war. And I really understood that. And I know I've read all your stuff. You've always been an inspiration to me, and I've seen you've been through those as well. I asked you about them at the time when we met, and it's you don't get to the kingdom without those continual inner wars, and they're much more difficult than the exterior wars, you know, because of course to go to the interior stuff, you have to let go of all the physical abilities, the physical armor. You know, that doesn't help you in there. Of course, the will helps you, because you have to. You have to enter the land, you have to enter the will, but you can't take the fisticuffs with you. You can't take the kicks and throws. It has no value at all. It's a completely different level of combat. And of course, part of growing is knowing that people will be offended by it. People will attack you, but it's also understanding and having compassion for that, because that's part of the process. So you take their anger into consideration and you find compassion for that, because you recognize that at some point they're going to want to follow, and they're going to have to go through what you've gone through. And as the great rabbis of law said, I'm so pleased I went through that, but I never, ever want to go through that again.
Well, I tell you what, it's something that you haven't talked about it, at least lately. It's like when I left you, here's my vision. When we left, the dream I had after I left was the gladiators left the arena and he needs to go to his meditation cave. And that was metaphorical in my mind, but it was almost like you disappeared for a few years. You just kind of
5 years, yeah.
Interesting, huh? It's
I had to go away. There was a final round of cleansing. You know, the cleansing comes in rounds. It doesn't come all at once. It would be debilitating. As you reclaim old parts of you, they are saturated in consciousness. You couldn't do it all in one go because you would be, you know, you would be without any kind of egoic influence at all. You know, there has to be a reduction of the ego and an expansion of the consciousness or the soul. So as we contract, we expand. As we expand, we contract. So we contract ego, we expand consciousness. As we expand consciousness, we contract ego. That has to be gradual. So I knew I'd got this final round of cleansing to do. And I knew I'd been given a sign. I've been told to get rid of everything because it would take everything would take all of my willpower and all of my concentration to be able to go into the very center of my own ark and sit there while the storms come and let God protect me. So I knew that I had to get rid of all external things, reduce myself down to, you know, a single-celled amoeba almost. And then once all of the old stuff had been cleaned away and I'd reclaimed it, I'd be able to gradually expand back into the world again, which I'm kind of doing now. Part of that kenosis was writing notes from a factory floor, which was I would say that was my burnt offering. That was my sacrifice. You know, when they talk about animal sacrifice, the allegory is that it's about sacrificing the animal part of our soul in order to attract consciousness. And the burnt offerings were, of course, are always sin offerings. So I was looking at all of the areas where I'd hurt people, where I'd been unkind, where I'd been violent. And I was writing them, confessing them to the book, and saying to God, this is all the things I can remember. I'm sure there's a lot I don't remember, and I'm going to give it over to you. The moment I finished that, I've been trying to write a book called The Divine CEO for a couple of years, but it just wasn't coming. And of course it wasn't coming because it was blocked by all of these old sins that were still nestling in me, still feeding from me. So the moment I removed them, I did 150,000 words in 8 weeks. I finished on the Friday and I said to my wife, CEO has come, it's arrived, I can feel it. I walked up to Coombe Abbey where me and you walked, and 20 chapter headings downloaded in my head. I mean, they literally downloaded. And I never knew what these chapters were before. I had an idea. I wanted to write a book about a divine alignment, you know, finding my divine CEO, my inner Moses, and connecting to God, and then becoming a vessel for God. But I didn't quite know what to write. I came back and started on the Monday, another 8 weeks, 150,000 words, and The Divine CEO, which is an amazing book. And I can say that objectively because it's nothing to do with me, other than I got in its way. It came through me. It picked up all of my stories and all of my flavors, but it definitely wasn't me because there's a poetry to it that is other than me. And I know that. So I'm not going to take credit for it, but it came through in a rush. As much as I could sit down, Bill, that book just kept coming through. If I had more stamina, I was probably writing about 7 or 8 hours a day. If I had more stamina, I could have, if I had the stamina of Aurobindo, I could have sat, you know, I could have just sat down and the whole lot would have come through me. But I didn't have that stamina, but I still got it down in 8 weeks. And then after that, I had to kind of, I would say I had a breakdown, I would say. I'm reluctant to say the word breakdown because it was more of a breakthrough, but there was a tremendous rush of Kundalini. I've had Kundalinis before that lifted me to the 7th heaven. and I was floating for 2 years and nothing could hurt me. On this one, it came through me. It was like fire. And this voice said to me, just stay in the center, stay in the ark, build the ark, get in the ark, stay in the center, and everything that is not clean will be given back to God. My body and my mind, I've not spoken about this to anybody else yet because it just hasn't arisen yet, but my body and my mind was like Oxford Street tube station of beings coming in and out of me, cleaning me, the amount of things leaving, but the amount of disembodied beings coming in me, and I was watching them coming into me, and cleaning me and removing stuff. It was, I'll tell you what happened, Bill. I finished these books. I knew I was empty. I knew I was completely empty. And I'd been booked to do a talk, an important talk about forgiveness. And I meditated before I went to it. And I saw a vision of myself. And I was on stage and I was a giant. I mean, I was huge. People in the audience were going, God, he's huge. He's a giant. Look how big he is. And it wasn't metaphorical. They were just saying he's big. And I could see myself. So I knew it meant that this talk was going to trigger something. But I didn't know what. I didn't know whether it would be a Kundalini where I'm floating again. After I went over and was teaching in America for Chuck Norris, I had a Kundalini that lasted me for 2 years. I was impervious. Nothing could touch me. And miracles were happening around me. Anybody that came into proximity, miracles were happening. But on this one, I didn't know which way it would go. I only knew that something was going to happen and I was going to expand again. And of course, an hour after the talk, it exploded in me like a bomb. And I knew I wanted to run in every direction. And I knew as well, Bill, I knew this wasn't going to go overnight. I knew this was going to be a prolonged cleansing. But it just kept saying to me, this is for you. This is a personal cleansing for you. This is God personally coming into you and cleansing you. This isn't like an angelic cleansing. This is God entering you, and God is going to cleanse you. And of course, you're going to feel the pain and the distress of that. But the pain and the distress is not yours. The pain and the distress is the parts of you that are being invited to transcend, invited to leave, because they're holding up the party and God's got work for you. So I had 3 months of where that was very, very intense. I was waking up at 5 and it took me into a routine of 5 o'clock meditation, strict eating. And after about 3 months, I had an instruction. Listen to this, Bill, you'll love this. I had an instruction to read the Zohar. The Zohar was given to me as a gift a year and a half before. I did some work for a film producer called Guy Ritchie. He did a documentary on the ego, and he invited me to be one of the people on it. And I did this documentary, and one of his guys sent me 24 volumes of the Zohar, which I couldn't even open the box when it came because I was so spent at the time. I didn't even look at it. So I just have this I've got acoustic clarity because I was so raw, and have this very clear instruction. Sit down, you're empty. Sit down, we want you to fill you. We want to fill you with something from the Torah. So the Zohar is the commentary on the esoteric Kabbalah. So you've got the Torah, which is the 5 books of Moses. I know you know this anyway, and then you've got the Kabbalah, which is the mystical end of the Torah, of the 5 books. And then you've got the Zohar and the Tanya, which are commentary. But it's so esoteric that you can't understand it. You don't understand it. It's not written in a way to understand it. It's written in a way to devastate any parts of the ego that wants to understand or control. It doesn't come in a way that you understand. It comes in a way where the soul reads it. The soul reads it like it's a what are those things called, Bill, when you go into a shop and you just scan it?
Okay, yeah, there's the little lines, and you go.
Yeah, the lines. Yeah, the soul reads it like it goes into, it just sees what it is and reads it. The ego doesn't have to understand it. The ego doesn't need to understand it. It's written in the way so that the ego can't understand it. So the ego goes, we shouldn't be reading this because it makes no sense. So every single day I had to captain my will, sit down, and I read full time. It took me 3 months to reading and making notes over 8 hours. And that was as much as I could do. If I tried to do any more than that, I literally, I felt like I was going to go insane. I just couldn't take any more than that in. And over 3 months, that I was completely, whatever had gone had come back into me. It was a barcode. It read it like a barcode, and it completely filled me again. And then it put me into a period of, 3 times a week, 3 times a day meditation and study. So I've been studying specifically the Torah, but again, it's once you go beyond denotation, once you go beyond the names. I'm not studying the Torah. I'm not studying the 5 books. I'm not studying Judaism. I'm just talking directly to God, and it's going into my soul. And my ego has to stand out of the way and let it come through. I have to captain myself. So the Moses in me is born, the soul is born. But like in the Old Testament, Moses wasn't articulate. He said to God, I'm not articulate. I don't know how to, I can feel what you're giving me, but I don't know how to voice people. So he said, don't worry, Aaron will do it for you. Your brother Aaron will do it. So Aaron became my I call the sentinel ego. So I found a sentinel ego, like a king ego that was happy to be subservient to this higher soul. And that was the one that made me sit down, do the work. That was the one that took me to interviews when I needed to do interviews. That was the one that enabled me to deliver the work when my ego was very afraid to deliver the work. So I developed a soul, and then I developed a subservient sentinel ego that said, okay, you give me the commands and I will captain the sensual body. I'll captain the physical body. I'll go out into the world and I'll pass on what God's asked you to pass on. So that was the divine covenant. That's what I developed. But there's a lovely line in the Rumi poem, love is not a subtle argument. The door there is devastation. And of course, what it means is in order to get to love, in order to get to God, we have to devastate the ego. We have to devastate everything, that isn't God, or, what they call it, apophatic theology, the idea of finding God through negation. We get rid of everything that isn't God. We get rid of the jealousies and the angers and the greeds, and we devastate them. And we just expose what is always there, the constant, which is compassion, God. So that's continued from this point onwards. The 2 books have gone out, and I've been doing lots and lots of interviews. But this is the first one I've actually talked about this. And this is something I know I'm being asked to write about at some point. And just need to be ready before I do that.
Well, this is the you that when I met you 4 or 5 years ago, whatever it was, 4 years ago, this is what I envisioned. This is who I was talking to then, even though maybe you hadn't materialized that, for the outer world. Inside, you kind of knew where I was going.
Yeah.
What was weird was neither one of us really knew that much about each other. We kind of read a little, whatever, but we didn't really know each other. Well, we spent 4, 5, 6 hours together, whatever it was that day. And it was, I felt like I was with an old high school buddy or an army friend, like I've been through the war with. Actually, like I've been through the war with, like you were in the arena with me at one time or something. That kind of feeling, comrade. And
I felt the same.
So
I loved it. I loved you. I loved what you were doing. I said to Tony Summers, who you went and met and you subsequently become close friends with. I said, this guy is traveling around the world on nothing but faith. He turns up, people pick him up, they put him up, they feed him. This guy has the kind of faith we dream of having. I said, this guy isn't just talking about it, he's going around the world on a shoestring, and people are feeding him. I felt compelled to come and pick Bill up and take him to somewhere and feed him. And then you felt compelled to bring him to your gym. And then he ended up coming to America and spending 2 weeks with you. I said, that's ultimately what it's about. It's about having the faith to just get on the plane and know that someone at the other end will pick you up, will take you around, will house you, will feed you, and you can do it on very little. So it's that's what struck me most about when I met you. I just love that. I know how difficult that is, because faith is, you know, that's the final bastion. You know, to have faith to go, yeah, my mortgage is due tomorrow, and I'm not quite sure it's going to come, and that it will come. That's faith. Or you know, it's that sense of, like St. Francis says, I have no idea what God is going to do with this, but I'm excited to see. He's not doubting what God's going to do. He just knows something good will come from it. It will be the optimum result, but we don't need to know what it will be. We follow this divine sat nav. We don't need to know the 500 streets and roads it's going to take us down, or the 5,000 or the 5 million. We just need to know where we are today. Someone said to me in a recent interview, what does the next 5 years look like? I said, I can tell you what the next 5 minutes looks like. I said, other than that, I'm waiting for instruction. I'm following instruction. I'm following commands. And of course, the same as everybody, my faith is still tested. I still have moments where I fall, where I get caught by the negative forces. I just learn to recognize it quicker and come back into alignment quicker. God is very practical in my life. It's very real. It does, you know, what I always used to say, if this doesn't work with your finances, with your relationships, with your health, what good is it? And of course, we know, Bill, that it works with all those things. Those things are tiny when you're working with this kind of force, but you still have to have faith like iron, because it always comes at the 11th hour, and it always comes from a source that you never quite expect. I say to my wife, don't worry, it's coming. What we need is going to come. Yeah, but we've got this due next week. And I said, what you need will come. And then something will come at the very last minute. And then she'll go, oh yeah, well, of course I knew that was going to come, because I've just looked at so-and-so. And I said, no, you didn't know it was going to come. I knew it was going to come. I just didn't know how. But when it comes with its own history. It comes with a lineage where if you want to, you can trace it back and say, oh, of course, it's from there. But actually, it's just a miracle. It just appears, and it appears when you need it. That's faith. But I don't know anybody in the world who's got that faith as strong as you, Bill. That's what I loved about you. What I loved about when I met you, because I know how difficult that is, especially when you've got kids and you've got a wife, and you're trying to say to them, you know, like that. Look, have you seen that film, Horton Hears a Who?
No.
It's a great Horton Hears a Who. It's about a community called the Who community, and they live in a speck of dust on a flower in the forest, and it's been held in the trunk of an elephant. Anyway, the story goes that the elephant starts, because he's got great hearing, he starts to communicate with the mayor of Whodom, and he says, trying to explain to him, your world is in danger. They're going to be building in this jungle, and I've got to take you somewhere safe. So the mayor of Whodom has to try and explain to all of his people that our reality is just a speck of dust in a flower being held in the trunk of an elephant in the sky. And when he's doing this delivery to all of his people from his balcony, he goes, our reality is in danger. He says, our world is in a speck of dust, in a flower, being held by an elephant in the sky. And all of them go, and he goes, but you can't see it. So I'm trying to explain to people, what we need is coming. It's coming from the hidden realms, but you can't see. I can't show you it, but you will see the results. So I've had a lot of that. I've had a lot of explaining to people that I'm guided. I have angelic guidance around me. It's palpable. It's here in this room with me now, and I have my transport, my supper, my housing is looked after. You know, I still have to take instruction and push when I'm asked to push, and yield when I'm asked to yield. But all of that is looked after. But trying to explain that to somebody who perhaps doesn't quite understand the hidden realm so much, they're looking for certainty. And I'm saying, well, the only certainty is that it will come, but I don't know where it will come from, but it will come, and it will appear out of nowhere. And when it appears, after 5 minutes, you will find a reason that it appeared other than God. but I won't, because I know where it's come from. So I've had lots of that, Bill. You know, our reality is in a speck of dust in a flower, being held by an elephant in the sky, but don't look because he's invisible.
Um,
So there's a lot of that going on.
you know, something I haven't heard you talk about publicly, maybe you do, but I had kind of like a dream about you and your wife, and I don't even know your wife. Sharon, is that her name?
Aaron, yeah.
She's got to be one of the greatest gifts that you ever got.
Yeah.
I'm just feeling this person's energy as your yin to your yang type thing. I mean, it's like, this is the balance that you needed.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Yeah,
had it come earlier in your life, you would have wasted it. You would have never
yeah.
saw it.
I wouldn't be doing what I'm doing now without
No.
her. I've had moments when I've said to her, I've been excited about stuff. I said, Sharon, I've got to write a film that touches millions of people. And she grabs my hand over the table. She says, Geoff, when you speak to a stranger on the phone about his depression, you are touching the whole world. And she doesn't know where that comes from. When you speak to a stranger, she said, you ignore the things you do because you don't think they're big. But when you touch the hand of a stranger and you talk him through a depression, that touches the whole world. Everything affects everything. And she was the one, when I first had my big epiphany, and I said, I was kind of talking in the language, I've got to save a village in India. I said, I've got to help people. I've got to serve people. She says, Geoff, there's a pile of letters in there from people asking you to serve them. There's a pile of emails that you haven't written back to from people asking you to serve them. Why don't you start there? She said, the local is global. So you're absolutely right. And even when my path has taken her into dangerous territory, when she's been afraid, and I've written a lot about this in my book, Notes from a Factory Floor. I've written a lot about Sharon. There's a whole chapter on that. But when she felt in danger and she felt threatened, she still encouraged me to go. She still encouraged me to do it. So I've always known she's my spiritual counsel, even though she doesn't speak a spiritual language. But if I fall out of alignment, or if I fall into judgment, she'll say, what was that? She spots it. She can spot a speck of ego and she just pulls it straight out. And I'll wriggle a little bit and then I'll go, no, you're right. Thank you. So we're good for each other, but I don't think I'd have published my first book without Sharon. She was the first one to recognize that I'd written something that meant something, because I said to her, I want to be a writer. And she read my manuscript and she said, you already are a writer. And I loved her from that moment onwards. I've never stopped loving her. So I've never lost sight of the fact that she is like the Sheshina. She's like the female aspect to my male aspect, you know. So and I talk to God about her all the time, and I thank God for her all the time as well. So it's good. We keep each other balanced. But you know, it's one of those weird things. Even with the martial arts bill, I would have instruction coming to me, and I say, Sharon, I've bought 5 judo suits. I'm going to be doing full-time judo for the next 2 years. Okay. And I just dropped everything, did full-time judo, nearly got killed a couple of times, got my ears cauliflowered, battered all my elbows. And she just supported me. She dropped me off. She made me food. She brought me back. She kept my suits clean. When I went and did my black belt, she sat with me. When I lost my bottle at the black belt, I just said, I don't know why I'm here. She said to me, you know why you're here. Don't even go there. You know why you're here. You know, what do you think? Did you expect to have no opposition? She said, this is what you teach. You are facing the opposition. Don't be overwhelmed by the opposition. You're here for this reason. So I talk and I say a lot. She says very little, but what she says is very profound. So I'm very blessed, Bill. It's interesting that you noticed that. You're the first one to notice it. Because she says to me, when I meet people, she said, it's really interesting. She said, they don't even know I'm there. She said, they bypass me and look straight at you and they talk to you. And even if you refer to me, they don't look at me. But I like that. I like that invisibility. I like the fact that she's invisible in plain sight.
She was very visible to my heart when we met, when we were walking.
Yeah.
I kind of felt like you were taking her with you on that walk. It
Yeah.
wasn't, I wasn't just walking with you. It was like, this is a spiritual team. She was there really kind of going, come on, come on.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah.
So
That's
that,
very true.
yeah, really, I am so impressed. I don't get impressed, but I'm so happy. Maybe that's a better word. I'm so happy seeing this side of you because this is a side of you that I saw 4 years ago. And I wanted to go, come on,
Yeah.
come on
Yeah.
out there. Come on, come on.
Matt.
Jump out of your skin. Come on. Uh,
Yeah, it was peeping out, wasn't it, Bill? It
uh,
was peeping out. It was having a little look around to see how things were, but it takes time. I knew it was there. I'd been avoiding it for a long time, to be honest. And when the very difficult Kundalini hit me, and I was in a lot of pain, I said to Sharon, "I want this. I've been running away from this." I said about 3 opportunities to do this, and each time I've run away. And I said, "I'm not going to run away from this." Nobody else even knew it was going on, Bill. Other than that, I disappeared for a while. But I knew what it was, and I'm not saying I'm brave because I know I didn't take the fight. I know that God asked me to stay in the center, and He would do the fighting for me. He would do the cleansing for me. I just had to stay in the center. But I kept saying every time it come up, I'm grateful for this. I want this as much as it's killing me. I want it. I've had 3 opportunities, and I'm not going to miss this one. I'd already had a sign that it was coming, and I'd had a sign where it was going to take me. I said, I'm just going to stay with it, and I'm just going to have faith. And you have to be, obviously, you have to be prepared to lose or let go of everything that is not God. So the ego has to be completely sublimated so that it becomes the servant of the soul. And then, of course, the ego gets everything it needs anyway. It's saturated. It processes all this divine essence. It's all processed through the ego, through the central ego, through the cells in the body. And of course, I guess that's the secret. It's the secret to the tree of life. We draw down in order to share. Whereas I've spent quite a lot of my life divided, bringing down to share, but also a lot of times falling onto the left-hand column and drawing down just to have for myself, just to consume. And that always, you do get a lot of stuff, but it ends up, what you consume consumes you, corrupts you. So I had to make a choice. Which side of the tree am I on? Am I on the tree of life, or am I on the tree of good and evil? And I knew I needed to draw down in order to share. That was the secret of my first book, Bill. I did a book called Watch My Back 30 years ago. Notes from a Factory Floor is the sequel to it. And the reason that book was so popular, I mean, it sold all over the world, probably sold, about 100,000 copies or something. More than that. It's been a film, it's been a play, it's been a feature film. Romans, the film that I've just done with Orlando Bloom, is based on one small story in there. Every film I've done has come from that one book. It's a Pandora's box. I remember waking up at 4 a.m, sweating and deeply suffering with depression. My wife lying next to me in the bed, and the helplessness of knowing she can't help me, and reaching out and thinking I've got to go to the doctor, and knowing that the doctor can't help me, and looking at my kids, they're asleep in the other room, oblivious to why their daddy is suffering so much. My wife's afraid of me because she doesn't understand depression, and I'm like a lost puppy following around the house, this physical guy just on my knees, and I am absolutely cornered. And I remember buying books and buying magazines, everything that promised to give me the answer, and none of them did. And I remember saying to myself angrily, when I find the answer, I'm going to tell everybody. People aren't telling the truth. They're not telling the truth because they're afraid to be vulnerable. They're afraid to tell the truth. And I'm going to tell everybody. So, of course, when I had this flash of insight to draw a pyramid and climb the pyramid, I did a pyramid of fears. I wrote down all of my fears on it and confronted them one by one until I got to the top. I had this fear of violent confrontation, and I became a bouncer to overcome my fears. But of course, once I did that, I started to write about it, and I started to tell everybody. And the reason the book was so extraordinarily successful Not just in the fact that it sold a lot of copies, but in the fact that it became a short film that was BAFTA nominated. It became a stage play, an acclaimed stage play. It became this film with Orlando Bloom. It became another feature. It became a lot of different things. It became thousands of articles. It became thousands of talks. It gave me a platform. But that came because I triggered on the secret. We draw down in order to share. I'm only a vessel for it. I'm going to draw it down, and God will give me as much as I can make room for. And then my job is just to deliver it. Like you, I watched a documentary on you yesterday where you were talking about the fact that my books and my talks, they're going to be out there and they're going to meet with somebody and they're going to be an intercession for somebody. My job is to put as much out there as I can so that at some point in some language, someone's going to pick that up and it's going to be life-changing because the Spirit is going to lift off the page and it's going to enter them and it's going to take them in a more positive direction. It's going to give them hope. And I knew that was the answer when I wrote that first book, although I couldn't have articulated it then. You know, I can articulate it now because it's processed over a long period of time. So that's the secret. The secret is you can have as much of anything as you want, providing you draw it down in order to share it. And of course, it's like I said, it's got to be processed through you. So you get everything you bring in. You're saturated with this divine essence. And then, of course, you're excited. You're thinking, wow, if I can make my vessel even cleaner, if I can make my vessel even more congruent, even more aligned, if I can find that sweet frequency, God will bring more through me. And that's exactly what happens. It excites you to do it. I mean, I think that's probably the only reason you go into the cleansings, because you know beyond that, you are going to expand and you are going to be a vessel. And then when God works through you, it's not like he's working through you. He possesses you. For that time that he works through, you are God. You are actually a manifestation of God in the world. That's what in Judaism, they say. The mitzvah is the vessel. Tell them to make me a temple and I will dwell amongst them. The temple isn't even the body. The temple is the charity, or they call it the mitzvah. You know, so when we do a charity, we become the vessel for God. We become God. So you go, well, if that's how I get God to enter me, I want to try and help as many people as I can. So the secret is hidden in plain sight. You know that lovely saying that God is hiding, but he's coughing. He's going, you know, he's just letting you know he's there. He's not, you know, he's there as soon as you want to see him. So it's took me a long time to be able to articulate it, and to do that I had to get rid of everything in my body that wasn't congruent with that same message. And I would say that's going to be a process that will carry on for the rest of my life.
Well, I've watched your life and I've watched these stepping stones. I think the biggest stepping stone was forgiveness.
Yeah.
Especially in your life. And then you've turned it into a life of service, even though some people don't think it's a life. It's really a life of service, because you're giving the way out. Like, for example, your pyramid of fear. I've met martial arts people and people in this country, and they're talking about that with no reference to where they got it from. You know what I mean?
Isn't it?
It's like it's taken on life. Everybody thinks, well, it's just been out there forever. No,
it's been out there. Yeah.
No,
yeah.
Here's the guy that did it. So think about this. You keep taking the next step and the next step and the next step, and then breaking away as you did 4 years ago or so. That was I'm trying to think of a real good word for that. That was more massive than you even know. I mean, it was like the heaven opened up. It's like, okay, the guy's emptied his cup. Now we can fill it again with something better, right?
Yeah.
You've been drinking Coca-Cola. Now they're going to give you orange juice, right?
Yeah.
They're going to give you something healthy here, right? Here's
yeah.
So
That's so true.
I noticed something that I ran across a long time ago with your stuff, and that's just, I don't know if you help work with them or if you're on the board or if it's yours, but I know that this forgiveness project they got.
Yeah, the Forgiveness Project in London. It's actually run by a woman called Marina. I can't claim any credit for any of that. That's ran by Marina. Um, I think it was started by the owner of Body Shop, who got Marina to, Anita Roddick encouraged Marina. She gave us some money, told her to set it up. It's been going for a long time. I did some work with them, but it's, all the credit for that is to do with Marina. But there are thousands of stories online about forgiveness on the Forgiveness Project. I worked with them for a short while, going into prisons and talking to people. But they have an ongoing thing where they work with, they work within prisons, helping people to find forgiveness, to find repentance, to educate them, to help them to find a better life, because obviously even criminals are victims. Everybody, whether you are the perpetrator or the perceived victim, everybody is a victim of this secondary force that works through human beings, that feeds off human beings. I think Eckhart Tolle calls it a world pain body. In Judaism, they call it the Sita Akra, and in Christianity, they would call it the devil or Satan. But it is an ordained energy, a bit like gravity, a bit like weights in the gym. We need it to develop a physique, but it will hurt us if we don't treat it with respect. So what they recognize, what I've recognized, is that anybody that falls out of alignment and falls into crime is a victim as well. And we can't just kick them to the curb and ignore them. We have to try and educate everybody. The top 10% and the bottom 10% need to be the same. So we need to educate. We need to teach people to read. There's a massive disparity in prisons. A lot of people can't read properly. We need to be able to get books into people to inspire them. We need to have people going in there to talk. The main thing, I think, is trying to get books into them so that they can read something that gives them hope, because everything around them is saying, you're a criminal, you can't repent, you can never go back to the center. But it's actually not true. The people who have committed a crime have got more potential for spiritual elevation than anybody else, because they've got so much negative energy to burn up. They've got so much to sacrifice. Like with me, I had so much sin in me because I was violent for 10 years. My spiritual elevation has been there because I had so much sin in me, and I used it as fuel for the sacrifice or fuel for the lamp. I didn't elevate despite what happened to me. I elevated because of it. So if you look at things like Angulimala from the Buddhist canon, killed 99 people, the Buddha converted him. He's kind of saying, it's an allegory saying nobody's beyond conversion, nobody's beyond repentance. Look at St. Paul. He crucified Christians. He persecuted Christians. He became the voice in the New Testament. I think he wrote 17 of the books, St. Paul. You look at Milarepa, the Vietnamese Buddhist, killed 35 people in a revenge attack and was so mortified by what he'd done. He actually killed his girlfriend's parents. He actually went to see a monk and said, I want to find enlightenment in this lifetime. I've got to get away from the torment of what I've done. And Milarepa found enlightenment within one lifetime and they call him the murderer turned saint. There is precedence in all of the religions, even someone like Mandela, who was a terrorist before he became this living saint. There are markers there saying nobody is beyond repentance, and the people who have committed the greatest crimes are the people that are the most welcome. That's the prodigal son. There's so much there to convert, So it's so what Marina's doing at the Forgiveness Project is she's giving people lots of stories so they can see examples of forgiveness, but she's also working with people in prisons to help them to reform. So there's a whole reformation program going on. But of course, as you know, we've got to educate the top 10% as well, because the top 10% don't seem to understand, the law of compensation. They don't seem to understand reciprocity. We still have a lot of people leading countries who are desperately incongruent. It's not a judgment; it's just an observation. And if the top 10% aren't congruent, that's going to reflect all the way through society. So to pick the lower elements of society up. We have to lift the higher elements. And that starts with me and you, with the guy that's watching this now. Whoever you are, John, Dave, Mary, Peter, Susan, you've got to change now. You have to change. You have to become part of that 10%. And when you lift your consciousness, the consciousness of the planet will lift. We don't need to be waiting for politicians. You know, we need to do it ourselves. We are the potential 10%, aren't we?
And you know what they say, people lose track of this during these strange times that 2020 are, because people are looking at everything as, you know, and I'm going, you know, when darkness starts to overtake everything, light always comes, right? And if you got a big group of bad guys over here with super real bad evil darkness, there's a balance in the universe. It means you have some super spiritual, highly evolved beings here keeping everything together. And it doesn't take many to change the mass. It just a few enlightened souls.
Yeah, a tiny flame can light a whole room, can't it? It's so allegorical, but it's so true. And it's the thing I'm trying to say to people more and more, though, is that that's you watching this now. You who are murdering 200 people a day with your tongue, who are assassinating 200 people a day over your coffee, murdering your friends, murdering your family, you're murdering your colleagues, talking badly about them, being unkind about them. You are breathing out negative spirit into the world. It lives. You're giving negative spirit a life. That's got to come back. That's got to, you know, that you're giving it a presence in the world. So, you know, someone asked me recently about giving me a powerful esoteric exercise. I said, don't gossip for the rest of the day. Don't say anything unkind about anybody. It's very difficult, but that's where it's got to start. People want to change the world, but they can't change their own waistline. They want to change the world, but they can't settle an argument in their own front room. Well, they can't settle an argument in their own head. They don't really know who they are. So it's saying the exciting thing is you've got to come back to you, the person that's out there watching this now, do the work. And if you want to find God, it's not difficult. Just start by looking at the elements in your life that you know are not God. You know, we know that jealousy and anger and gossip and envy and greed, we know that that's not goodness. We know that doesn't deliver anything nice into the world. So stop engaging that. Stop feeding that. We know that if we're overeating or over drinking, it's not what we're eating and drinking, Bill. It's what we're feeding. What are we feeding in us? What is the gannet in us that we're feeding? Stop feeding it. You know, stop taking in more than you need to burn up. Get control of this vessel. Get control of this physical. People want to do these supernatural things, but they're still not delivering on the mundane things. I was one of them. I was absolutely one of them. I was supposed to be this master martial artist, a fifth dan. This was about 20 years ago. I remember looking in the mirror and thinking, I'm overweight. I'm addicted to sexual pornography. I self-harm. I sexually self-harm. Nobody knew about this. And you may not have called it self-harm, but I knew it was. I said I was like a bully. If my wife, if I cuddled up to Sharon and she didn't feel like a cuddle, I would slam doors and be monosyllabic and give her a cold back in bed. What is that, Bill? That's bullying. That's saying if you don't give me sex, I am going to absolutely withdraw love and make your life a misery. I couldn't believe when I saw myself in the mirror like that. I was bereft when I realized what a bully I was. But nobody would have thought of me as a bully, because they saw me when I was out and about, and I was a nice guy. But I knew when I got my fifth dan, my friend Peter Considine said, you don't get this grade for what you've done, Geoff. There's a bit of that, but he said, you get it for what you're expected to do. So I immediately said, I've got to honor this grade. I've got to honor this master grade. I've got to get control of my palate. I've got to get control of my sensual body. While somebody else or anything else has more control of my endocrine system, my adrenals than me, I'm in trouble. If the ring of the telephone can control my adrenals more than I can control it, if a cake can control me, if a cigarette can control me, if a drug can control me, if alcohol can control me, if I can't stop myself from doing that, where's the power there, Bill? There's no power. So people can become vessels for power very quickly by doing the things that seem like they're not extraordinary. What something Sharon said to me once, I said, I can't understand why people aren't getting the palate palate is so important. What we eat, what we drink, what we take in through the eyes, what we take in through the ears, what we, what we touch. I said, the environment, everything we bring in is flesh. And she said, I said, it's just basics. And she said, yeah, but that's the problem, Geoff. It's not basics. Palate is advanced esoteric practice. Very few people can get it. So it's another one of those things where these exercises are there. Excuse me, they're right in front of us, and we can start. If I want God to enter this vessel, this massive power to come through me and project and create in the world, I need to make sure I've got control of that vessel. Otherwise, it's going to come in, it's going to be taken over by an egoic entity, and that same energy is going to be taken through the wrong filter, and it's going to create devastation in the world. So these are the things I found out when I got my fifth Dan, and it was shocking to me. It was shocking to look in the mirror and just see this guy that had, all I could do, Bill, was have a fight. I could have a fight. And that's nothing to be proud of. All the other stuff I had no control of. And I just thought, I've got to get this. I've got to get this. I remember reading Gurdjieff. I read a book called Beelzebub's Tales to His Grandson. It's about 1,500 pages. And my eyes were bleeding afterwards. It's such a big book. And right at the very end, because it's another esoteric book that is written deliberately in order to trip up the ego so that you can't really understand it. But right at the very, very end, at the epilogue, he said, oh, you powerful man, you powerful man. It was like he climbed into the ship. I was on a cruise. He said, you think you're powerful. He said, but a negative message will throw you into a tizzy of fear. A positive message will throw you into a tizzy of pride. Don't call powerful when the telephone has more control of your endocrine system than you. I'm paraphrasing. And I remember being so angry at him because he was so right. So I've got to work on that. I've got to get control, as Gandhi says, get control of the endocrine system, control the sensual body. We control that, of course, through palate. When we control the palate, the senses fall into line. When the senses fall into line, we get control of the self. When we get control of the self, we become a vessel for a higher power, because it's going to come into us, because it's going to say, this is a vessel that is not going to corrupt what we give it. It's not going to hijack it. It's not going to try and smuggle it. So that became my raison d'etre. But of course, all of these old sins, all of these old habits, old perceptions, these old cognitions, these old beliefs, these old conceptualizations, they were semi-autonomous thought forms. They didn't want to give up their cushy place in fat Geoff Thompson, in violent Geoff Thompson, in pornographic Geoff. They didn't want to give up their sovereignty. I had to fight to get them out. And that was the internal jihad. That was the greater jihad, the greater battle. So I'm saying to people all the time, you can start now. It's no good railing your fists at politicians if you're not meeting your own standards. It's no good railing at criminals. A lot of these criminals are absolutely bombarded by tremendous forces of darkness. I said, if you want them to fight those forces and beat them, but you still can't fight the force of a cake. You still can't fight the force of an extra beer. You can't stop yourself from gossiping. So you've got to at least meet your own standards before you expect them to meet theirs. They are facing, if these people are committing crimes and committing murder, it means they are bombarded by tremendous forces. They are victims in their own right. It doesn't justify what they do, but there are tremendous forces. You're asking them to combat these forces while you can't even keep your own waistline right. So it's kind of saying that it comes back to you. You've got to walk into these prisons and you've got to stand in front of these kids, and they've got to see, like they do with you, Bill, they've got to see that you're congruent. They've got to see that you're at least trying to live the way you're asking them to live. They've got to know that you have met the same forces as they've met and you've overcome them. Not even that, you have converted them. This negative energy has been converted into spiritual light because you've got a mastery of the body. So it all comes back to the self. And of course, when we displace and we blame, we just fall into the negative forces and we just become part of the problem. We get us, and that's the exciting thing for me. Whoever's watching this now, they can start now, this minute, in their front room. Why can't I control what I eat? Why can't I stop myself from shouting at my wife? Why can't I stop myself gossiping? Why can't I make myself get up at 5 and meditate? Or why can't I make myself sit down and read the Torah, or read the Bhagavad Gita, or read the Quran? Why am I taking somebody else's opinion of what Islam is? Why am I not sitting down and reading about this beautiful man, Muhammad, and what he discovered and the secrets? Because the Quran obviously leads right back to the Torah. And the Torah is the blueprint of the universe. The Torah is what took Viktor Frankl through Auschwitz. He changed reality in that prison camp, not by reading the book as he was instructed, but by becoming the book. The book was taken off him. He had the Torah with him everywhere he went. The guards took it off him, and the voice from God said to him, "We don't want you to read the Torah anymore. We want you to become the Torah. We want you to become the Word." So that, all of that arcana, all of that instruction, all of that didactic information, is in the hidden books. I'm not talking about the dogmatics external books. I'm not talking about the revealed books. I'm talking about, that's just the fire and thorns around the hidden Torah. I'm talking about the information that's beyond that. When you look at the Gita, what's it really about? When you look at the Quran, what's it really about? When you look at the New Testament, the Old Testament, when you look at Sikhism, when you look at any of them, what's it really about? All of it is saying to you, turn in, find the singularity, find the quantum vacuum in you, find that still place, stay in the ark, and let yourself become a vessel for as much force as you want. It's all about turning in. And once you get beyond the names, this is what the Buddha said. He said, freed from denotation, I am by consciousness. No more denotation. So we're no longer reading a Christ. We're no longer reading a Muhammad. We're no longer reading a Moses or an Abraham. We're no longer reading a Arjuna Pandava. We are just encountering denotated pure energy, and we can bring it through and create beautifully in the world. So it's kind of saying, don't take anybody else's word for this. Don't let anybody scare you away from these books. These books have profound meanings, but you have to get past the fire and thorns. You have to get past the house ghost. The house ghost is saying, don't go there. It's dogmatic. Don't go there. It's terrorism. Don't go there. They treat women badly. Don't go there. They treat men badly. Don't go there. It's full of politics. Don't go there. All of the wars of the world are caused by this. Find out for yourself. I mean, God, some of the stuff, Bill, some of the messages I've got by going into the esoteric, by getting rid of those house ghosts. These books are so beautiful, but they're so rich. It takes a dedicated discipline to be able to sit down and study them properly. But they're there. You can access that now free online. They're giving Qurans away. They're giving Christian Bibles away. They're giving it away. I think God is not happy that he's having to drag people to paradise by force.
Well, I'll tell you what, you've been taking people to paradise without force during this conversation, and it's been great. And me and you will continue to have these kind of conversations. We might even do another one of these recorded publicly.
Yeah.
I think your greatest message has always been about forgiveness and service. And so we're on the same, believe it or not, we may appear to be different kind of warriors, but basically it really gets down to, we both got this love and serve thing, but forgiveness is the element that makes both of those work.
Absolutely.
And so I want to thank you for giving me this time this morning. And I know it's late in the afternoon there, and I don't know, where are you at today?
Where am I geographically?
Yeah.
I'm in Coventry.
Okay, you're back.
About a mile from the park where we walked.
Oh, okay. Beautiful neighborhood. Well, the sun has come up here, and you can see the sun is kind of shining on my head here. But we will meet again. I'm going to be posting this, and people are interested in you. You know what? We didn't do any commercials this thing. I know you got new books out. I know you got a website, and I know you got a Facebook page. If you can give us that information, because I think people are going to generally want to tap in where you're at.
Well, the only place I'm online, Bill, is I have an Instagram page, and it's Geoff Thompson Official. I'm not on Facebook. I'm not on Twitter, and I've got no websites now. There is somebody on Facebook who's pretending to be me and giving away free books of mine, but that's not me. I have nothing to do with it, so I don't know who that is, but that's not me. But they can find me and the recent stuff I'm doing on Geoff_Thompson_official. That's on Instagram, and they're welcome to come there. There's quite a lot of stuff on there, and lots of talks and stuff.
And of course, there's your public talks. By the way, I watched your interview on London Real, where you talked about your new book.
Yeah.
I recommend that for people, and I may be posting that at some place to pass the link on, so people will find you that way as well. This has been beautiful. Give Sharon a hug for me, because I feel like she's a friend to me as well, even though we've never physically met. But here's the deal. I don't know if you followed the story when I had a last near-death experience, and I had all this vision of faces, don't leave because you have to help these people. No guess, but your face was there, and that's why it was ordained that we meet.
It was.
But the thing is, you've got so much more you got to do, and you come to that point in your life, and I think you've said it well through your books and through your talks. But basically, everything that happened to you had to happen to you.
Yeah.
It made you who you are right now, today, this moment. What's even more beautiful is it's going to make you who you are tomorrow, which is even going to be greater, because the light is only growing in you.
Yeah.
And I appreciate this.
And you're an inspiration to me, Bill. I tell Tony all the time. Me and Tony talk a couple of times a week. You're an inspiration to me. If I can get half as much faith as you, I will be very happy.
God bless you.
God bless, Bill.